All right, so we're ready for a deep dive today, and it's all about PMBOK.
PM book.
Yeah, the PMBOK, and
That's how you say it.
we've got a stack of PMBOK docs here, 6th, 7th, and that 8th edition draft.
Yes,
And I know you're looking for like the need to know stuff here, so
absolutely.
we're not going to get too deep in the weeds or keep it high level, but like, what actually shifted in project management thinking?
Right.
What's new in the 8th edition? What can you actually use? Like,
Yeah.
how has project management changed?
Well, the fascinating thing is that it really has evolved. I mean, if you look at where PMBOK started and where it is now, it's not just about managing tasks anymore.
Right.
It's really about delivering value. And I think part of that is a response to, organizations realizing that some of these projects they're undertaking maybe aren't worth the investment.
Right, no more vanity projects.
Yeah, no more vanity projects.
So how does PMBOK actually like make sure that projects deliver value? How does it measure that?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is just that emphasis on outcomes instead of outputs. So they actually define value as the benefit to investment ratio.
Okay.
And I think that's really interesting because it's like, okay, it's not enough to just build a bridge. You have to show that that bridge is actually improving lives and it outweighs the cost of building the bridge.
No, I had a project like that once where we were so focused on just like
Uh-huh.
hitting deadlines, we didn't even really think about the why
Yeah.
we launched it. And no one used it.
Oh.
It was crickets because we never really considered the benefits.
Yeah, and that happens all the time. And I think that's why PMBOK is really trying to steer us away from that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they have in here that really drives that point home is this visual of projects as transitions. And this is figure 1-1.
Okay.
And it really shows, how a project moves an organization from its current state to a desired future state.
Mm.
And so they're really emphasizing that projects are vehicles for change.
So it's not just checking tasks off a list anymore. It's like steering the entire organization
Yeah.
in the right direction.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it seems like this emphasis on outcomes and value is like woven throughout all the changes in PMBO.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of changes, like the structure of the PMBOK itself
Okay.
has gone through a bit of a metamorphosis between these editions.
Metamorphosis sounds dramatic. Break it down for us. What was 6th, 7th, 8th edition all about?
Okay, so if we go back to the 6th edition, it was all about inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs, or ITTOs, as they like to call them.
Yes, ITTOs. I remember those.
Very process-focused.
Yeah, like the building blocks.
Yeah, exactly. Very step-by-step, very much about here's how you manage a project.
Right.
And then along comes the 7th edition, and things start to shift a little bit.
Okay.
So the 7th edition really focuses on performance domains.
Okay.
And these are kind of like clusters of activities
Right.
that are really crucial for achieving project outcomes.
So it's less about the steps and more about what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, it was a shift from like rigid processes to a more holistic view of project management.
So more about the what than the how.
Exactly. And then, here we are now with the 8th edition draft.
Right.
What did they do?
Yeah.
It's almost like they took the best parts of both and kind of blended them together.
Interesting.
So the 8th edition reintroduces the ITTOs and those process descriptions, but this time it puts it within the framework of those performance domains.
Yeah, so they're saying, hey, processes still matter, but they need to be aligned with outcomes.
Yeah, I think so.
It's almost like they're trying to appeal to both the traditional project managers and the agile folks.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good observation because I think that there has been a lot of debate in the project management community about, is it waterfall? Is it agile? What's the right way to do things?
Right.
And I think the 8th edition is saying, hey, both are valid. It really depends on your context.
So choose the right tool for the job. Interesting. Okay. And speaking of tools, they introduced something totally new in the 8th edition.
Yeah.
These project management principles.
Yes, the principles.
I like this. This is like taking it to the next level.
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting because it feels like a shift from telling us what to do to helping us understand why we do things.
Right. It's like less about checklists and more about having good judgment.
Exactly. And so there's 8 principles in total, but some of the ones that I think are most intriguing are focus on value, which we've already touched on.
Okay.
Recognize complexity.
Recognize complexity. Isn't that a given? I mean,
Right.
have you ever worked on a simple project?
Never.
Never.
But I think what they're trying to say is that complexity is inherent in every project,
Okay.
and it needs to be explicitly addressed. you know?
So it's not just about following a plan, it's about knowing that the plan will change.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, and then the third one is tailor.
Taylor, so like tailoring you're tailoring your project management approach?
Exactly. It's about adapting the PMBOK guidance to your unique context.
So one size doesn't fit all.
One size does not fit all.
But it's not saying just throw out the rule book and do whatever you feel like, right?
No, it's about using your judgment
Okay.
and your experience to figure out which tools and techniques are going to be most effective in your specific situation.
Informed flexibility.
Informed flexibility. I like that.
Okay, so we've got principles, we've got performance domains. Anything else that's really different in this 8th edition draft?
Oh, yeah. Definitely the way that they talk about development approaches.
Okay, so like waterfall versus agile.
Yes.
Is PMBOK finally acknowledging that agile exists?
They are more than acknowledging it. They're embracing it.
Okay.
So they talk about the spectrum of development approaches, and they're saying you could have a predictive approach, which is your traditional waterfall.
Right.
You can have an adaptive approach, which is your agile methodologies.
Okay.
Or you can have a hybrid, which is a blend of the two.
So they're not saying one is better than the other. It's all about choosing the right one.
Exactly. And they even have a visual in here, figure 3.3,
Okay.
that shows the spectrum of development approaches and how they relate to each other.
So we've got a smorgasbord of approaches we can choose from.
Yes, we do.
But how do we know which one to pick? How do we know which rhythm is the right rhythm for our project?
Well, that's where the concept of delivery cadence comes in.
Oh, delivery cadence. That sounds very musical. Tell me more.
Yeah. So delivery cadence basically refers to how often you are delivering results throughout the project.
Okay.
So it's really about setting the rhythm for the project.
Okay, so walk me through this. What are some of the different rhythms I can choose from?
So they contrast two main rhythms, incremental and iterative.
Okay.
So incremental delivery is kind of like if you were building a house, you would build one room, and then you would fully finish that room, and then you would move on to the next room.
Okay, got it. So iterative would be like building like a basic version of the whole house.
Yes, exactly. And then you go back and you refine it and you improve it.
Yeah. Okay, and so how do I know if I need to build one room at a time or the whole house at a time?
Well, it really depends on how clear the requirements are and how much flexibility you need.
This is cool. I mean, it seems like the 8th edition is really trying to give us the tools to deal with the messiness of projects these days.
It's recognizing that projects aren't just about following a recipe anymore.
Right.
It's about being adaptable. It's
Okay.
about making decisions based on your context.
It's about being smart.
It is about being smart.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yes, it is.
There's so much more to explore in this 8th edition draft.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned. We'll be back in just a minute to dive even deeper into these changes.
I can't wait.
Me neither. This is exciting stuff.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is a move towards being more adaptable in project management, recognizing that things change,
Right.
plans change.
Yeah, and speaking of complexity, you mentioned that as one of the key principles in the 8th edition.
Right.
I'm curious, like how does the 8th edition go beyond just saying, hey, projects are complicated?
Well, I think they really encourage us to view projects as systems within systems.
Okay.
You know, remember that figure 1.2?
Yeah.
That showed the projects, programs, and portfolios and how they all relate?
Yeah.
I mean, it really highlights the fact that a project doesn't exist in isolation, right? It's
Yeah.
embedded within an organization, and that organization is embedded within a larger environment.
So we got to think about all these layers, not just our little project bubble.
Exactly.
I think I've been guilty of that in the past.
Oh, yeah.
Like just so focused on my to-do list that I miss the big picture.
It's easy to do. It's easy to get tunnel vision.
Yeah.
But I think the 8th edition is really encouraging us to kind of zoom out and consider those bigger factors, you know,
Okay.
like the organizational structures,
Right.
enterprise environmental factors, and even something called organizational process assets.
Okay, you're going to have to break those down for me. I'm picturing like a Venn diagram with all these overlapping circles.
Yes, exactly. It's a lot of overlapping circles. So organizational structures are pretty straightforward.
Okay.
It's just how the organization is set up, you know, it's
Right.
hierarchy, it's departments, it's decision-making processes, all of that stuff.
So like a project in a super hierarchical organization is going to be run a lot differently than a project in a flat, agile company.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
So that's one circle.
Got it.
The next circle is enterprise environmental factors.
Okay.
And these are all the things outside of the organization
Oh.
that can impact the project.
Like government regulations.
Like government regulations, market conditions, economic trends, the weather.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, anything you can think of.
so many things. So many things.
That's outside the organization that can impact the project.
So it's like the PMBOK is acknowledging that we're not in a vacuum here.
Exactly.
Projects are out there in the real world getting buffeted by all these external forces.
Yeah, it's like a little boat on a choppy sea.
I like that visual.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the third circle is organizational process assets.
Okay.
And these are kind of like the internal resources and knowledge that the organization brings to the table.
Okay.
So think of things like templates, lessons learned from previous projects,
Okay.
even the organization's culture.
So before you even start planning your project, the 8th edition is saying, hey, look around, understand your environment, see what you can leverage here.
Yes, and I think that's a really important point because it can really help you avoid those "I wish I had known that before" moments that we've all experienced in project management.
Yeah, I've had a few of those.
Yes, too.
So the 8th edition is helping us be more proactive, more informed.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about all these external factors and internal factors,
Right.
but what about the project manager?
Yeah.
Where do they fit in all of this?
That's a great question. And I think the PMBOK's view of the project manager has evolved quite a bit. You know, in the past, the project manager was often seen as the one with the plan.
Right, the one calling the
Yeah,
shot.
the commander, the one in charge.
The hero.
Yeah. But now that we're talking about more flexibility, more adaptation,
All right.
I think the project manager's role has shifted a bit.
So they're not a hero anymore.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but I think they're less of a commander and more of a leader, a communicator, and a facilitator.
Okay, unpack those for us.
Yeah.
What does it mean to be a project manager who leads, communicates, and facilitates?
So as a leader, the project manager is responsible for building a high-performing team.
Okay.
Right. So it's not just about assigning tasks. It's about motivating people. It's about inspiring them. It's about creating a shared vision.
So more like a coach than a drill sergeant.
Exactly. Yeah. Much more collaborative.
Okay, I like that.
And then there's the communication piece.
Yeah.
So the project manager becomes this central hub of information.
Oh boy.
Right. They're constantly communicating with stakeholders, managing expectations, making sure everyone's on the same page.
That sounds like a lot of meetings.
It does involve a lot of meetings.
But I guess it makes sense if you want to be flexible and adaptable, you got to keep those communication channels open.
Exactly. You got to be talking to people all the time.
Okay.
And then the third piece is the facilitator role.
Okay.
And this is where the project manager helps the team to work through challenges, resolve conflicts,
Right.
make decisions. You know, they're not dictating solutions.
Okay.
They're guiding the team towards finding the best path forward.
So they're like a therapist for the project,
A therapist for the project? Yeah, I like that.
helping the team work through its issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the 8th edition really emphasizes the importance of soft skills and emotional intelligence in project management.
So it's recognizing that projects are about people.
Yes.
You give them the best plan in the world,
Right.
but if your team's not motivated, if they're not all on the same page,
Exactly.
you're not going to get anywhere.
It's not going to work.
And that focus on the human side of project management, I think it leads really nicely into this idea of impact,
Yes.
which is another key takeaway from the 8th edition.
Absolutely.
And by impact, we're talking about like
Right.
more than just delivering the project on time and within budget.
Exactly. It's about understanding how the project contributes to the organization's strategic goals.
Okay.
It's about considering the long-term consequences, both positive and negative.
So don't just build a bridge.
Right.
Build a bridge that strengthens the community and reduces traffic congestion and,
Yeah,
is environmentally sound.
yeah, think about all those ripple effects
Right.
that the project has.
The 8th edition's telling us to think about sustainability,
Yeah.
stakeholder satisfaction, the legacy we're leaving behind.
And I think that's a really important shift in perspective because it's moving us away from just being successful to actually being meaningful.
Oh, I like that.
Right.
It's like project management 2.0.
It is.
It's about doing the right things, not just doing things right.
Exactly. And I think that that really sets the stage for exploring the specific tools and techniques
Yes.
that the 8th edition offers because,
Give you the tools.
right, it's one thing to talk about principles and concepts,
Right.
but how do we actually put these ideas into practice?
Yeah, our listener wants those aha moments.
Yes.
Those takeaways that they can apply to their own projects.
Exactly.
So in the next part,
Yeah.
let's dive into that toolbox.
Let's do it.
What are some of the techniques that really stood out to you
Yeah.
in the 8th edition? Okay, toolbox time. Let's get practical. What are some of those techniques that the 8th edition offers?
Yeah, so one of the things that really jumped out at me, especially, as we're seeing more agile and hybrid approaches being used,
Yeah.
is this emphasis on backlog refinement.
Okay, backlog refinement. Now, I've been in plenty of projects where the backlog was like this
Uh-huh.
bottomless pit of to-dos
Yes.
that never got touched after the kickoff meeting.
Right.
Is that what they're talking about here?
Not quite. So I think what the 8th edition is emphasizing is that backlog refinement is an ongoing process.
Okay.
It's not something you do once at the beginning of the project and then you just forget about it.
Right.
You're constantly reviewing, you're updating, you're reprioritizing.
So it's a living, breathing thing.
It is. It should be a living, breathing document
Yeah,
that reflects the current state of the project.
I like that. But how do you do that effectively?
Well, they mention a few techniques.
Okay.
One that I think is really helpful is user story mapping.
User story mapping.
Yeah.
I've heard that term thrown around.
It's a great way to kind of visualize those user stories
Okay.
and see the big picture and identify dependencies.
So it's not just a list. It's like we're getting visual here.
It's visual. It's about understanding the user's journey.
Okay. Is it actually useful in practice, or is it just
It can be.
like a fluffy?
I've seen it be really powerful, especially for teams that are maybe struggling to really visualize the scope of project.
Yeah.
It forces you to think about things from the user's perspective.
Yeah. Put yourself in their shoes.
Exactly.
Okay. And what about prioritization?
Yeah.
I mean, every backlog has those must-have features.
Right.
And then the nice-to-haves.
Mm-hmm.
How do we sort through all of that?
Well, they mentioned the Moscow method.
Moscow method.
Yeah, which stands for must have, should have, could have, won't have.
Moscow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a really simple framework, but it's very effective for just kind of like categorizing those features.
Okay.
And helping you to make those tough decisions about what you're going to focus on first.
Yeah, because sometimes it's like we just argue about it until someone gives in.
Yeah, and I think that happens a lot, and I think that the 8th edition is saying, even with Agile,
Right.
we still need some structure.
We can't
Yeah.
just totally wing it.
Yeah, we need some guidelines.
Okay.
And the Moscow method is a good one.
Moscow got it.
Sure.
Okay, so aside from these agile techniques,
Mm-hmm.
are there any kind of broader tools that stood out to you in the 8th?
Yeah, I think the emphasis on data analysis and decision-making
Data analysis.
is really interesting.
Okay.
So they talk about things like variance analysis, earned value management.
I'm getting flashbacks to my college stats class.
Yeah, no, me too.
Is PMBOK turning into a data science textbook?
Not quite, but I think it's recognizing that
No.
data is essential for making good decisions in project management.
We can't just fly by the seat of our pants anymore.
No, we can't. And I think, in the past, maybe we relied a little bit too much on intuition and gut feel,
Right.
but now we have the tools to actually measure things,
Yeah, to track our progress.
to track our progress, and to make more data-driven decisions.
Okay, so break down some of these tools for me. What is variance analysis?
Okay, so variance analysis is basically comparing your planned performance
Oh,
with your actual performance
Okay.
and seeing where you're off track.
So it's like a reality check for the project.
Exactly. It's saying, okay, are we actually hitting our targets
Yeah.
or are we kidding ourselves?
Are we on track to deliver this thing on time and within budget?
Right.
Okay.
And then earned value management takes that a step further.
Okay.
And it's really about measuring project performance based on the value of the work you've actually completed.
Value of the work completed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not just about time and money.
Okay.
It's about, are we actually delivering value?
Okay, so we're not just checking boxes. We're making sure that those boxes are actually worth checking.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then you've got predictive analytics.
Ooh, predictive analytics sounds futuristic.
It does sound futuristic, and it's still kind of an emerging field.
Yeah, okay.
But it's basically about using historical data and statistical models
Yeah.
to forecast future outcomes.
So we're feeding all of our project data into some fancy AI algorithm,
Yeah.
and it's going to tell us what's going to happen.
Well, maybe not with 100% accuracy,
Yeah.
but it can give us some insights into,
Right.
what are some of the risks that we might encounter? How long is this project actually going to take? How can we allocate our resources more effectively?
So it's like a data-driven crystal ball.
It is a data-driven crystal ball,
I like it.
but it's important to remember that we still need human judgment to interpret those insights.
Right. The AI is not going to run the project for us just yet.
No.
Not
Yeah.
Yet.
Maybe someday.
Okay, so lots of cool new data tools, but the 8th edition doesn't forget about the people side of things, does it?
No, it definitely doesn't.
Okay.
I mean, they still stress that communication, stakeholder management, those are crucial skills.
Right. Because at the end of the day, we're all working with people.
We are.
Okay, so any new techniques in the 8th edition for managing those tricky stakeholder relationships?
So they highlight stakeholder mapping,
Okay.
communication planning, and conflict resolution.
Stakeholder mapping, that sounds like something out of a spy movie.
It does a little bit, but it's really just about identifying your stakeholders,
Okay.
understanding their interests,
Okay.
and assessing their level of influence on the project.
So we can tailor our communication to them.
Exactly.
Okay, so less about espionage, more about relationship building.
Yes, much more about building relationships.
Okay, and communication planning. I mean, that's project management 101, right?
It is, but I think what they're encouraging here is a more strategic approach to communication planning.
Okay.
So it's not just about sending out status updates.
Got
It's
it.
about thinking about what information needs to be shared with whom,
Right.
how often are we going to communicate.
Okay, so it's planned,
It's planned, it's thoughtful.
not just reacting when things blow up.
No, be proactive
Okay,
with your communication.
got it. And then conflict resolution?
Yeah.
I mean, are they suggesting we all become certified mediators?
Well, not necessarily, but I think they're recognizing that conflict is inevitable.
Right, we're all human.
We're all human.
We all have different opinions.
Exactly. And so they offer some guidance on, how to foster open communication, how to find common ground,
Right.
how to work towards solutions that everyone can live with.
So it's not about avoiding conflict, it's about managing it effectively.
Exactly. And I think that that's something that we often struggle with in projects,
Right, it's uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable, but if we can learn to embrace conflict
Yeah,
and see it as an opportunity for growth,
right.
I think that that's really powerful.
Turn those disagreements into something positive.
Exactly.
All right, so it seems like the PMBOK is really evolving right alongside the field of project management.
It is.
It's not just this old dusty textbook anymore.
No.
It's recognizing that the world is complex.
Yeah.
Projects are messy.
Yes.
And it's giving us the tools to deal with all of that.
I think that that's a great way to put it.
So listener, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
Go grab that 8th edition draft.
Read it.
Dive in.
Highlight it.
Put those ideas into practice.
Exactly. And remember, project management is a journey, not a destination.
Ooh.
So, enjoy the ride.
Yeah, there's always going to be something new to learn.
Absolutely.
New challenges to embrace.
Wait.
New ways to create value.
That's the fun part.
Yeah, I love it. All right, well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the PMBOK.
It was fun.
It was fun. We'll be back soon with more fascinating topics to explore.
Yes, we will.
So stay curious and keep those project management brains engaged.